The air tasted like copper and ozone. Kael stood perfectly still, his chest heaving with ragged, uneven breaths. The cavern around him was silent, save for the wet, heavy sound of blood dripping from his fingertips. Beneath his worn combat boots lay the shattered, unrecognizable remains of an S-rank hunter, a being who, mere minutes ago, had possessed the power to level a city block with a single thought. Now he was just meat and bone. Kael looked down at his own hands. They were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer, unadulterated overload of data surging through his veins. The air itself seemed to be fracturing, spiderwebs of red static tearing through the fabric of reality. To his right, a translucent window hovered in the air, not the familiar, comforting blue glow of the system that every awakened human had seen for the past 10 years. This window was pitch black. Its borders were jagged, glitching erratically, bleeding crimson code into the air like a digital hemorrhage. Dead System Administrator Access, CORRUPTD. Warning, anomaly overload in progress. Target DLETD. Kael exhaled a shaky, hollow sound that echoed in the vast, empty cavern. He looked at the glitching red text, his dark eyes reflecting the unnatural light. They told me I was the weakest human alive, Kael whispered, his voice hoarse, scraping against the silence. For 6 years, they told me I was nothing. F-rank trash, a porter, the bottom of the food chain. He slowly clenched his blood-stained hands into fists. They were right. A low, buzzing hum began to vibrate in the air, the sound of the world's underlying code straining under the weight of what he had just done. But weakness? Kael tilted his head, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the broken, glitching reality around him. Weakness is just a line of code, and a red spark of static arched across his vision. I learned how to rewrite it. System error, system error, system error. The crimson static consumed his vision, the sound of shattering glass echoing in the void. 72 hours earlier, the alarm clock buzzed with the screeching, mechanical finality of a death sentence. With a thought, he summoned it. Status. With a faint, mocking chime, the translucent blue window blinked into existence before him. Name Kelshin. Class None. Level 1. Rank F. Strength 3. Agility 4. Stamina 3. Intelligence 6. Mana 1. Skills None. Morning garbage? Kael muttered to the screen, swiping his hand through the air to dismiss it. He went through his morning routine with robotic efficiency. Cold shower because the hot water had been shut off again. A protein bar that tasted like compressed sawdust and disappointment. He pulled on his work clothes, worn gray coveralls with the word porter stamped across the back in faded yellow letters. Kael couldn't punch his way out of a wet paper bag, so he watched, he analyzed. The hunters. And then there were people like Kael. Hey Kael, a voice called out. Drink up, kid, Minjun grunted, adjusting the straps on his massive pack. Heard we're with Stormbreaker Guild today. They're heavy hitters, means heavy loot, means heavy bags. Kael caught the can, his expression neutral. Stormbreaker, C-rank guild. They prefer brute force over strategy. Their vanguard tends to overextend, leaving the backline vulnerable. Will need to stay at least 30 meters behind their mage to avoid splash damage from aggroed mobs. Minjun stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head, laughing dryly. You and your notebooks, kid, you overthink it. Just keep your head down, carry the rocks, and don't look the hunters in the eye. That's the only strategy you need. Right, Kael murmured, slipping the notebook into his chest pocket. Just carry the rocks. And anything with rules had loopholes. Scene 2, the raid briefing. Listen up, you useless meat sacks. The voice boomed across the staging area, magically amplified by a low-tier acoustic skill. We are clearing a C-rank gate today. Crimson Hollow, Han announced, his voice dripping with condescension. It's a cave type. Goblins, cave trolls, maybe a rock golem if we're lucky. Standard trash clear. Your job is to stay out of my way, pick up the cores and not die. If you die, I have to fill out paperwork, and I hate paperwork. The other hunters chuckled. The porters stared at their boots. It was unstable. Kael stepped forward before he could stop himself. Excuse me. Did the luggage just speak? Han asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Kael kept his face blank, pointing toward the gate. The mana frequency of the gate is oscillating. There's a red shift in the outer corona. C-rank gates don't redshift unless the internal spatial pressure is rising. The dungeon might be undergoing a rank mutation. For a long second, nobody moved. Then, the entire Stormbreaker team burst into uproarious laughter. Oh man, one of the D-ranks wheezed, slapping his knee. The porter is trying to do math. Let me explain something to you, F-rank trash, Han whispered, pressing a heavy, gauntleted finger against Kael's chest. You see this? He tapped a silver badge on his chest displaying a C. This means the system recognizes me as a superior being. It means I have skills, stats, and power you couldn't comprehend if you studied for 1,000 years. You don't analyze gates, you carry my bags. Han shoved Kael hard. Kael stumbled back, his meager strength stat offering no resistance. If you open your mouth again, Han sneered, I'll leave you inside for the goblins. Now pick up the gear and move. He looked at the gate again. The red shimmer was slightly more pronounced. Scene 3 inside Crimson Hollow. The transition through a gate always felt like being pulled through a straw made of freezing water. The air was oppressively thick, pressing down on Kael's lungs. All right, let's make this quick. I have a dinner reservation at 8, Han shouted, drawing his massive broadsword. It was a slaughter, brutal, efficient, and entirely mindless. But his eyes never stopped moving. He watched the hunters fight. They pushed deeper into the cavern system. The tunnels grew wider, the ceiling rising into darkness. The red crystals lining the walls became denser, their light pulsing in a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. And then things started to change. An hour in, they encountered a cave troll. It should have been a standard mini-boss. But as Han charged it, the troll roared, its muscles bulging unnaturally. It swung a massive stone club with a speed that defied its size, smashing Han's block and sending the C-rank hunter sliding back 10 feet, his boots carving grooves in the stone floor. What the hell? Han grunted, shaking his numbed arms. Since when are C-rank trolls this fast? It took the combined effort of the entire team, expending high-tier cooldown skills to bring the troll down. They were panting, sweating, their previous arrogance replaced by a tense, jittery caution. Kael stood near the back, his heart beating a little faster. He pulled out his notebook, his pen scratching rapidly across the page. Troll's muscle density was approximately 40% higher than standard C-rank parameters. Aggression levels peaked earlier. Environmental mana density is increasing. The red crystals aren't just lighting, they're absorbing ambient mana and reflecting it back at a higher frequency. The dungeon was feeding the monsters. Hey Han, one of the D-ranks called out, looking nervously down the dark tunnel ahead. Maybe we should head back. We got a decent haul. This doesn't feel right. Han turned, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment from the troll fight. We don't retreat from a C-rank gate. Do you want the other guilds to laugh at us? It's just a geographical anomaly. We push through to the boss room. Han, wait, Kael said, stepping forward, dropping his heavy pack. Look at the walls. The crystals are turning dark red. The ambient temperature has dropped 4 degrees in the last 10 minutes. The monsters aren't just strong, they're terrified. They're running asterisk away from whatever is deeper in. Han spun around, his eyes blazing with fury. He marched over to Kael and grabbed him by the collar, lifting him onto his toes. I told you to shut your mouth, Porter, Han spat, his breath hot against Kael's face. If you speak again, I will dock your entire pay for the month. Do you understand me? You are nothing, you don't make the calls. He threw Kael backward into the dirt. Kael landed hard, the jagged rocks tearing the skin on his palms. Pick up the bag, Han ordered, turning his back. We're moving. Kael slowly got to his feet, wiping the dirt and blood from his hands. He looked down the dark, yawning throat of the cavern. It felt like looking into the open maw of a beast. We're dead, Kael realized, a cold, clinical certainty washing over him. He just killed us all. He picked up the bag. Scene 4, the Red Gate. They walked for another 20 minutes. The silence in the cavern was absolute, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the gravel. There were no more goblins, no more trolls. The tunnels were completely empty. And then the system message appeared. It didn't just appear for Kael, it appeared for everyone. A massive, blaring red window that materialized in the center of their vision, accompanied by a sound like a blaring air raid siren in their minds. System alert, dungeon mutation DETACTED. Rank upgraded, C right arrow A. Dungeon type, red gate. Exit SEALED until boss clear or party wipe. The blue glow of the gate behind them far in the distance suddenly flared violently, and then it snapped from blue to a deep, blood-soaked crimson. A red gate, the rarest and most deadly phenomenon in the system. A dungeon that forcibly upgrades its rank and locks the participants inside. Only S-rank guilds survived red gates. A C-rank team was just monster food. Panic erupted immediately. No, 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 the pyromancer screamed, dropping his staff and clutching his head. A-rank, we can't fight A-rank. Open the gate, open the damn gate. Shut up, Han roared, drawing his sword, though his hands were shaking violently. Formation, defensive formation now. But it was too late. The shadows clinging to the ceiling of the cavern suddenly detached. They didn't drop, top, they flowed, moving like liquid ink through the air. Monster identified, Shadow Reaver A rank. There were 4 of them. They were humanoid but elongated, their limbs too long, ending in scythe-like claws that gleamed with dark energy. They had no faces, just smooth, featureless masks of obsidian bone. They moved with terrifying, impossible speed. One moment, they were on the ceiling. The next, a Shadow Reaver materialized directly behind one of the D-rank hunters. Slash! There was no scream. The D-rank's head simply slid off his shoulders, his body standing upright for a horrifying second before collapsing in a fountain of blood. Fire, fire, Han screamed. The pyromancer unleashed a massive torrent of flame, illuminating the cavern in a blinding orange glare. The fire washed over the Shadow Reavers, but as the flames cleared, the monsters stood completely unharmed, the fire having harmlessly phased through their bodies. Phase shifting, Kael's mind raced, even as terror threatened to paralyze him. He had scrambled behind a massive boulder, clutching his useless porter packed to his chest. They convert their physical mass to shadow to avoid energy damage. Physical attacks won't work either unless they solidify to strike. The second D-rank turned to run. A Shadow Reaver vanished into the floor, appearing as a two-dimensional shadow beneath the running hunter, before erupting upward, its claws bisecting the man from groin to sternum. Blood sprayed across the cavern walls. The metallic smell of copper overwhelmed the sulfur. Die, just die, one of the C-rank fighters bellowed, charging with a glowing spear. He managed to graze one of the Reavers as it solidified to attack, tearing off an arm made of shadow. But the Reaver didn't even flinch. It spun, its remaining scythe arm cleanly severing the hunter's torso. 3 dead in less than 20 seconds. Han and the pyromancer were back-to-back, completely surrounded by the 4 A-rank beasts. Han was fighting with the desperate, wild strength of a cornered animal, his broadsword deflecting lightning-fast strikes, but he was outmatched. His movements were too slow, his C-rank stats incapable of keeping up with the A-rank speed. A Reaver materialized behind the pyromancer, driving a claw straight through the mage's spine and out his chest. The mage choked on his own blood and collapsed. Han was the last one left. He fought bravely, he truly did. He activated every buff skill he had, his armor glowing white-hot, his sword moving in a desperate blur. But a Reaver phased through his heaviest swing, solidifying inside his guard and drove a scythe into Han's stomach, pinning him to the cavern wall. Han coughed up a massive mouthful of blood, his sword slipping from his grasp and clattering to the stone floor. The Reaver stepped back, leaving the blade embedded in his gut. Han slid down the wall, gasping, his eyes wide with shock and agony. He turned his head, looking through the gloom, and met Kael's eyes hiding behind the rock. For a moment, all the arrogance, all the superiority was gone. There was only the terrifying realization of a man who knew he was taking his last breath. I should have, Han wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. Listened. His head slumped forward, his eyes glazed over. Kael was alone. An F-rank porter, no skills, level 1. Trapped in an A-rank red gate with 4 Shadow Reavers. The Reavers turned slowly, their faceless masks locking onto Kael's position behind the boulder. They didn't rush, they glided across the floor, savoring the fear of their final prey. But as they approached, the cavern floor suddenly began to tremble. The 4 Reavers froze, backing away, pressing themselves flat against the walls in an attitude of absolute submission. The temperature plummeted, Kael's breath plumed in white clouds before him. From the deepest, darkest tunnel of the cavern, a new figure emerged. It didn't walk, it floated inches above the ground. It was a towering, hulking humanoid formed entirely of swirling, suffocating darkness. It wore jagged, skeletal armor made of black ice. 2 burning, malevolent red eyes pierced the gloom, locking directly onto Kael. Boss monster identified, Shadow Sovereign A-rank. The pressure rolling off the boss was immense. It felt like being crushed at the bottom of the ocean. Kael's F-rank body couldn't handle the aura. His nose began to bleed, the warm liquid dripping down his chin, his vision blurred, black spots dancing in his eyes. He was going to die here, now, a meaningless statistic in a broken system. He looked at his useless, trembling hands. He looked at the bodies of the hunters scattered across the floor. He looked at Han's broadsword lying in the dirt just a few feet away. F-rank trash. The words echoed in his mind, the sum total of his life dictated by a blue screen he had never asked for. Something snapped inside Kael. It wasn't bravery. It was an overwhelming, icy fury, a rejection of the rules. If he was going to die, he refused to die cowering behind a rock. Kael stood up. The Shadow Sovereign paused, its red eyes narrowing slightly as if amused by the insect presenting itself. Kael stepped out from behind the boulder. He walked over to Han's body. He gripped the hilt of the massive broadsword. With his 3 strength stat, the weapon felt like it was bolted to the floor. Kael gritted his teeth, his muscles screaming, veins bulging in his neck as he managed to lift the blade, dragging its heavy tip across the stone. He raised his head, staring directly into the burning red eyes of the A-rank boss. "Come on then," Kael whispered, his voice trembling, blood dripping from his nose. "Show me what a god looks like." With a guttural scream that tore his throat, Kael charged. It was pathetic, a slow, agonizingly clumsy run, dragging a sword he could barely lift. The Shadow Sovereign didn't even draw a weapon. It simply raised a hand, forming a fist of pure, condensed shadow and swatted Kael like a fly. The impact was like being hit by a freight train. Crack! Kael felt his ribs shatter instantly, the bone fragments puncturing his lungs. He was launched backward through the air, flying 20 feet before slamming violently into a stalagmite. He fell to the floor, a broken doll. Pain eclipsed everything. He couldn't breathe. His lungs were filling with blood. The cavern spun wildly as his consciousness began to slip away. He lay on his back, staring up at the jagged black ceiling of the cavern. The Shadow Sovereign loomed over him, raising a massive foot to crush his skull. As the foot descended, Kael's vision faded to black. But in that final fraction of a second, his system window forced itself open. Status window. But it wasn't blue. It flickered violently, tearing at the edges, bleeding crimson light. System error. System error. Critical damage DETCTD. Connection to host server severed. Attempting to reroute. Reroute failed. The text fractured into 1,000 meaningless symbols. System error. And then nothing. Death. Scene 6, the source code void. Death wasn't a tunnel of light. Death wasn't fire and brimstone. Death was math. Kael opened his eyes. He wasn't in the cavern anymore. He wasn't anywhere. He was floating in an infinite, sprawling void of absolute blackness. But the blackness wasn't empty. It was filled with rivers of blinding, golden light flowing in every conceivable direction. As Kael looked closer, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible geometry, he realized the light wasn't just light. It was code. Trillions of lines of cascading, shifting, infinitely complex strings of data. Hexadecimal strings, algorithmic loops, structural parameters. They pulsed like a cosmic heartbeat, forming towering architectures of data that stretched into infinity. What is this? Kael thought, his voice echoing not as sound but as a ripple in the data stream around him. He looked down at his hands. They weren't flesh and blood. They were wireframes of white light composed of the same swirling data. He looked at a river of golden code flowing near him. Suddenly, without trying, he understood it. It wasn't just numbers. It was the physical manifestation of a dungeon's architecture. He could see the variables defining the stone walls, the spawn rates of the monsters, the loot tables. He looked at another stream. It was human. Millions of individual nodes, each representing a hunter's stats, their levels, their skills. "Oh, you can actually see this. That's new and highly irregular." The voice was small, metallic, and laced with heavy static. Kael spun around in the void. Floating a few feet away was a small, perfect black cube, roughly 10 centimeters across. In the center of the cube, a single glowing red eye blinked at him. "Who are you?" Kael asked, his mind spinning. "Where am I? Am I dead?" "Yes, no, and it's complicated," the cube replied, floating closer. "I am Echo, or at least that's what I call myself. I was supposed to be deleted in patch 1.02, turns out hiding in the corrupted data sectors works wonders for longevity." Echo did a slow spin, its red eye scanning Kael's wireframe body. "As for where you are, welcome to the basement. The source code, the architecture beneath the system that you humans worship so blindly." Kael stared at the flowing rivers of data. "The system, it's a program." "Ding ding ding, give the dead F-rank a prize," Echo said, its voice dripping with dry sarcasm. "Yes, Kael Shin, it's a program, created by beings known as the Architects. Your planet Earth, it's just server 7431, a farm." "A farm farming what?" "Energy," Echo said, its red eye dimming slightly. "Potential energy. Every time a human levels up, every time a hunter awakens a new skill, every time you overcome a life-or-death challenge in a dungeon, the system captures that emotional and physical energy and funnels it upward. The dungeons, they're just content generators, puzzles designed to force you to grow so they can harvest you." Echo floated closer, projecting a small hologram of Earth wrapped in glowing golden chains of code. "You're not heroes, Kael, you're batteries, and when the server is tapped out or it stops being profitable, they delete it. The whole world, poof." Kael didn't scream, he didn't break down in disbelief. Instead, a cold, analytical calm washed over him. He thought of his parents dying in a dungeon break. He thought of Han Yiwon's arrogance. He thought of his own 6 years of suffering trying to climb a ladder that was rigged from the start. The inconsistencies he had documented in his notebook for years. The strange cooldowns, the weird monster behaviors. It wasn't magic, it was bad programming. It was a rigged game. "Why am I here?" Kael asked, his voice dead cold. "If I'm dead, shouldn't my data be erased?" "Normally, yes," Echo said, "but you're special. Or more accurately, you're broken. When the Shadow Sovereign crushed you, the Red Gate's localized spatial distortion interfered with your system connection. It didn't sever cleanly, it fragmented. You're currently stuck in the firewall between the physical server and the source code." Echo projected a screen showing Kael's system ID. It was flashing red, a mass of corrupted, tangled code. "You're an anomaly," Echo said. "A glitch, and the Moderators, the system's antivirus, they delete glitches, brutally." "Can you fix it?" Kael asked, his eyes never leaving the corrupted code of his own soul. "I have 2 options," Echo said, hovering right in front of Kael's face. "Option A, I perform a hard reset. I reconnect you to the normal system. You'll wake up in your broken body, probably die again instantly from the A-rank boss standing over you, but you'll die as a normal F-rank. Clean, no moderators." "And option B?" Echo's red eye pulsed. "Option B is I stabilize the corrupted connection. I anchor you to the source code, but from the physical side. You'll go back, but your system will be broken permanently. You won't just see stats, you'll see the code, and because your connection is rooted here in the admin layer, you'll be able to edit it." Echo paused, the static in its voice intensifying. "But if you do this, you become the most wanted anomaly in the history of the system. The Moderators will hunt you. The architects will notice you. You will be walking with a target on your back every second of every day." Kael looked out at the infinite rivers of golden code. He looked at the vast, uncaring machine that had dictated the misery of his entire species. He didn't hesitate. "Option B," Kael said. "Fix me with the broken version." Echo's red eye narrowed in what almost looked like a smile. "Ambitious, suicidal, I like you. Brace yourself, Kael Shin. This is going to hurt." Echo rushed forward, burying itself directly into Kael's chest. Scene 7, Dead System Awakening. The pain was biblical. It felt like someone was pouring molten lead into Kael's brain while simultaneously electrocuting his spine. He screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the roar of tearing data. The golden void around him shattered into a billion crimson shards. Kael's eyes snapped open. He was back in the cavern, the cold stone pressed against his back. The smell of blood filled his nose. Directly above him, the massive, shadowy foot of the Shadow Sovereign was descending, milliseconds away from crushing his skull. Time seemed to freeze. In Kael's vision, the world didn't look the same. Everything had a faint, wireframe overlay. He could see the structural integrity of the cavern walls, the mana flow in the air. And next to him, his status window booted up. It was pitch black, bleeding red static. Dead System, INITLIZD. Administrator Access, CORRUPTD. Host Biometrics Critical Death Imminent. Stats Kael thought desperately. Strength 3. Agility 4. Stamina 3. Intelligence 6. Mana 1. Below the numbers, Kael saw it. The raw code, hexadecimal strings dictating the physical limits of his body. Abilities loaded, code read, code edit, code delete, locked, code write, locked. Edit it, Echo's voice rang in his mind, sharp and urgent. Kael reached out with his mind, grabbing the line of code that defined his strength. It resisted, burning his mental grip like grabbing a hot iron, but he forced his will upon it. He rewrote the variable. Code edit initiated. Strength 3 right arrow 85. Agility 4 right arrow 80. The change wasn't just digital, it was agonizingly physical. In a fraction of a millisecond, Kael's muscles tore and rebuilt themselves, expanding with explosive, unnatural power. His shattered ribs snapped back into place, knitting together with titanium density. His heart slammed against his ribcage, pumping blood laced with raw, unadulterated mana. It felt like swallowing a lightning bolt. The Shadow Sovereign's foot slammed down, but it didn't hit stone, it hit Kael's hand. Kael was lying on his back, his single right hand raised, catching the crushing stomp of the A-rank boss. The ground beneath Kael's spiderwebbed, craters forming from the kinetic impact, but Kael's arm didn't buckle. He held the massive monster's weight effortlessly. The Shadow Sovereign froze, its red eyes widening in shock. Kael stared up at it, his own eyes glowing with a faint crimson light. "My turn," Kael whispered. He gripped the monster's foot and twisted. With a sickening crunch of ethereal bone, Kael hurled the massive boss backward. The Shadow Sovereign flew through the air, crashing into the cavern wall with enough force force to bring down a rain of stalactites. Kael slowly stood up. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the terrifying, intoxicating surge of 85 strength coursing through his veins. That was high A-rank level power. Careful, Echo warned in his mind. Every edit sends a ping to the network. You just manipulated core variables. They heard that. A new red window flashed in Kael's vision. Warning, system anomaly DETECTED in sector 7431 KR. Dispatching moderator 23-4 investigation. ETA 47 MINUTES. Clock is ticking, Kael muttered. He looked down and picked up Han's broadsword. Earlier it had felt like an anvil. Now it felt lighter than a kitchen knife. He swung it once, the blade cutting the air with a supersonic crack. The Shadow Sovereign pulled itself from the rubble, roaring in fury. The cavern shook. The 4 Shadow Reavers dropped from the ceiling, surrounding Kael, their scythe arms raised. Let's test this out, Kael said. He focused his eyes on the boss, activating his first ability. Code Red. Instantly, the Shadow Sovereign's code bloomed in front of Kael's eyes. It was a massive, complex block of data. Kael scanned the passive skills, ignoring the combat stats, looking for the underlying architecture. He found it. Skill Shadow Regeneration A rank. Description: heals all structural damage by drawing ambient darkness. Cooldown 0.3 seconds. A 0.3 second cooldown, Kael thought, his mind racing at superhuman speeds thanks to the dead system interface. That's why A ranks can't kill it. If you don't do fatal damage within a third of a second, it instantly heals. It's essentially immortal to anyone who doesn't possess burst damage capability. Not anymore, Kael said. He reached into the code. Code edit initiated. He grabbed the cooldown integer, 0.3, he deleted the decimal and added a 0.30. Skill Shadow Regeneration. Cooldown, 0.3 seconds, right arrow 30 seconds. Kael felt a sharp spike of pain in his temple, a nosebleed starting anew as the mental strain of editing rank code hit him, but the edit held. Kill them, the Shadow Sovereign roared in the monster tongue, pointing at Kael. The 4 Shadow Reavers vanished, phasing into darkness, instantly materializing around Kael from 4 different blind spots. But with 80 agility, Kael didn't see them as lightning-fast blurs. He saw them moving in slow motion. Kael pivoted, bringing the heavy broadsword around in a devastating, horizontal arc. He didn't use a skill, he didn't use mana, he just used raw, edited physics. The blade sheared through the first 2 Reavers before they could even phase out. The kinetic force so immense it simply tore their shadow forms apart, dispersing them into black mist. Kael didn't stop. He carried the momentum, spinning 360 degrees, bringing the blade down on the 3rd Reaver, splitting it perfectly down the middle. The 4th Reaver lunged, its scythe aimed at Kael's neck. Kael dropped his sword, stepping inside the monster's guard, and drove his fist straight through the Reaver's faceless mask. His hand exited the back of its skull, holding its pulsing, dark mana core. Kael crushed the core in his grip, and the monster dissolved into ash. 4 A-rank monsters, dead in 2 seconds. The Shadow Sovereign bellowed in rage, charging forward, summoning a massive blade of black ice. Kael calmly kicked his broadsword up from the floor, catching it by the hilt. The boss swung a strike that would have leveled a skyscraper. Kael parried it, the shockwave of the impact cratering the floor 50 feet in every direction. Kael's boots dug trenches in the stone, but he didn't yield an inch. The boss pulled back, preparing to regenerate its chipped ice blade. But nothing happened. The 30-second cooldown was in effect. The Shadow Sovereign looked at its hands in confusion, its red eyes flashing with unprecedented fear. A program realizing its code was broken. System error, Kael whispered. He vanished, moving faster than sound. He appeared directly above the massive boss, bringing the broadsword down with the force of a falling meteor. The blade cleaved through the Shadow Sovereign's shoulder, tearing diagonally down through its chest and exiting its hip. The boss froze. A blinding red light erupted from the fissure in its body. With a final, agonizing shriek of tearing data, the Shadow Sovereign exploded into a massive cloud of black mist. Silence descended on the cavern. Kael landed softly on the ground, the broadsword resting on his shoulder. He was breathing heavily, sweat mixing with the dried blood on his face. The physical toll of the edited stats was beginning to wear on his original, fragile body. A cacophony of system messages flooded his vision. Dungeon clear, red gate, crimson hollow. Solo clear bonus ACTIVATED. Experience calculated. Level up, level up, level up, level up, level up. The notifications stacked endlessly, pinging like a slot machine paying out a jackpot. The raw energy of a solo A-rank boss kill was enough to push a normal person straight to B-rank. But Kael didn't care about the levels. As the notifications flashed, he didn't see them as rewards. He saw the golden streams of potential energy being siphoned away, shooting upward into the ether, feeding the architects. Take it, Kael thought coldly, choke on it. In the center of the boss's remains, a massive, pulsing crimson dungeon core lay on the ground beside a glowing black skill book. Kael picked them up, shoving them into Han's discarded dimensional pouch. At the end of the cavern, the massive red gate began to hum, shifting back to a stable, calm blue. The exit was open. Time to go, Kael, Echo said, manifesting as a floating cube near his ear. The moderator is 30 minutes out. Kael deactivated his code edit. Instantly, his stats crashed back down to F-rank levels. His legs gave out and he fell to his knees, gasping in agony as his muscles screamed in protest, returning to their frail, normal state. Yeah, Kael wheezed, using the sword as a cane to haul himself back to his feet. Let's go home. He limped toward the blue light, leaving the bodies of the Stormbreaker Guild behind in the dark. Scene 9, The Aftermath. Outside the Crimson Hollow Gate in Seoul's District 4, it was chaos. The area had been cordoned off by the Hunter Bureau. Heavy military vehicles formed a perimeter, and dozens of Bureau agents in tactical gear had weapons trained on the swirling red vortex. When a gate turned red, protocol dictated a quarantine. You wait for the gate to break and you carpet bomb whatever comes out. Survival inside a mutated red gate was considered impossible for anything less than an S-rank strike team. Sir, mana readings are fluctuating, an analyst shouted from a monitoring van. The red shift is fatting, the gate is stabilizing. General Oh Seung-jin, head of the Special Operations Division, stood at the front of the barricade. He was a stern man, his uniform impeccable, his face carved from granite, national rank 2. Prepare to engage, General Oh commanded, his voice carrying over the din. The vortex flared brilliantly, shifting from crimson to a pure, calm blue. A single figure walked out. The Bureau agents tightened their grips on their rifles, but they didn't fire. It wasn't a monster. It was a young man, drenched head to toe in black blood, wearing the tattered remains of a porter's uniform. He was limping heavily, dragging a massive, broken broadsword behind him. The staging area fell into a stunned, absolute silence. Kael blinked against the harsh floodlights of the Bureau quarantine zone. He looked at the guns pointed at him, then at General O. Kael let the sword drop with a heavy clang onto the pavement. He raised his hands slowly. What happened in there? General O demanded, stepping forward, his sharp eyes analyzing Kael's pathetic F-rank mana signature. Where is the Stormbreaker team? Dead, Kael said, his voice flat, hollow, perfectly playing the part of a traumatized survivor. Gate mutated, monsters everywhere. Han, he fought them off, told me to run. I hid in a crevasse. The boss, I think it triggered a cave-in and crushed itself. I don't know, I just hid until the blue light came back. General O stared at him. The lie was flimsy. It was mathematically impossible for a boss to crush itself. It was statistically impossible for an F-rank to survive the ambient pressure of a red gate. But O's scanners showed Kael's stats. Strength 3, level 8. The system still registered his normal levels, hiding the dead system architecture. He was weak, harmless. Take him to medical, O ordered his men, though his eyes never left Kael. Full debriefing when he's patched up. As two medics rushed forward to grab Kael's arms, Kael lowered his head, hiding the faint, cold smile on his lips. While they walked him toward the ambulance, Kael's enhanced hearing picked up the whispers of the Bureau agents around the vans. Did you see the readouts? One agent muttered. That's the third red gate mutation this month. The algorithms are completely destabilizing. Something is severely wrong with the system. Kael looked up at the dark sky above Seoul. You have no idea how right you are, asterisk, he thought. Scene 10, The Moderator's Eye. Night had fully fallen over Seoul. Kael stood on the gravel-covered roof of his decaying apartment building in District 9. The wind whipped his dark hair around his face. He had showered, scrubbing the dried monster blood from his skin, and changed into clean clothes, a black hoodie and a dark combat jacket. The pain in his muscles had subsided to a dull ache, manageable. Echo hovered near his shoulder, its red eye glowing softly in the dark. So, Echo buzzed, you survived your first day as an anomaly. You lied to national rank 2. You have a multi-dimensional bounty on your head. What now? Kael leaned against the rusted railing, looking out over the sprawling, neon-lit expanse of the city. The gleaming guild towers pierced the sky like glowing daggers. Now, Kael said quietly, I learned learn everything about the system. I learn how to read the code faster. I learn how the architects built this farm. And then, Kael's eyes narrowed, a faint crimson static flashing in his pupils. I find a way to break it all. Echo bobbed in the air. That's incredibly ambitious, also suicidal, but I respect the energy. Kael allowed himself a small, genuine smile. For the first time in 6 years, he didn't feel like a victim. He didn't feel like trash. He had a purpose. He had a weapon. And then the sky cracked. It wasn't a physical sound, but Kael felt it in his teeth. His dead system interface suddenly screamed to life, materializing in front of him, flashing violently in blinding red. Warning, warning, warning. Administrator override imminent. Kael stumbled back, clutching his head as a migraine spiked behind his eyes. Kael, look up, Echo whispered, its voice trembling with digital fear. Kael forced himself to look at the sky above Seoul. No one else in the city could see it. The millions of people walking the streets, eating in restaurants, sleeping in their beds, they were oblivious. But Kael, with his administrator access, saw the truth. The clouds parted, rolling back to reveal a massive, swirling vortex of pure white code, and from that vortex an eye opened. It was larger than the city itself, a colossal, perfect eye made of blinding, cascading data. It stared down at Seoul with cold, emotionless, machine-like judgment. Moderator 23, entering Sector 7431 KR. Scanning for anomaly. Scan radius 50 kilometers. Resolution, individual system IDS. A wave of invisible pressure swept across the city. Like a radar pulse, the eye began scanning. Millions of tiny blue pings lit up the city below in Kael's vision, every single human system ID being cataloged, checked, and verified in microseconds. The scan line was moving fast, sweeping from the wealthy districts across the river, heading straight for District 9. Don't move, Echo hissed, dropping down to hide behind Kael's collar. Don't breathe, don't think too hard, your dead system signature is corrupted data. If you don't engage it, it might just register you as background static, MIGHT. The scan wave hit Kael's building. Kael stood perfectly still, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He could feel the pressure of the moderator's gaze pressing against his mind, probing, searching for the F-rank who had rewritten a rank code. The massive eye in the sky paused. It locked directly onto Kael's rooftop. The pressure intensified, forcing Kael to his knees. Blood began to drip from his nose again, hitting the gravel roof. He didn't wipe it away. He didn't blink. He stared up at the godlike machine, holding his dead system perfectly dormant. The eye narrowed, the white code swirling aggressively around its pupil as it studied the void where Kael's normal system ID should have been. It found only fragmented, broken static. For 10 agonizing seconds, the world held its breath. Then a new message flashed in the sky, visible only to Kael. Anomaly signature, inconclusive. Escalating to Moderator 074 physical investigation. The massive eye slowly closed. The swirling vortex of code faded into the night sky, replaced by the normal, polluted clouds of Seoul. The pressure vanished. Kael gasped for air, collapsing onto his hands and knees, sweat pouring down his face. Echo floated up slowly, its red eye dim. So, that was Moderator 23, an automated scanner. It couldn't confirm your signature from orbit. Kael wiped the blood from his face, looking at the small cube, and Moderator 07. Oh, 7 isn't a scanner, Echo said quietly. 7 has a body and it's coming here personally. Kael pushed himself up from the gravel, his muscles ached, his head pounded. The architects were coming for him. The gods of the system had noticed the glitch. He looked at his trembling hands, clenching them into fists until the shaking stopped. His eyes were steady, cold, ready. Then I'd better be ready, Kael said to the empty night.